Hey everybody, I'm Jennifer Maggio. Welcome to the Life of a Single Mom's channel. We are so grateful you're here. We hope that today's broadcast blesses you. We're going to get into sex and the single mom. We are going to jump right in with some of our TLSM family. If you don't know much about the ministry, we have served over 1 million single moms over the last couple of decades, and we want you to be part of the family. But welcome to LaShonda and Alicia, who have long been part of the family. I'm grateful for you guys coming in and just talking about what is truly a necessary conversation as we think about, we've seen this shift in culture, and we have seen how, over, I would say, the last 40 years, there has just been this kind of slow fade into a deeper and deeper acceptance of what the Bible calls bad, the world calls good now. Yeah. And not only does the world call it good, but it forces it on you. Yeah. And so I think about that. I think about my time in junior high and high school and things that are now so normal that were taboo then, and just on and on the list goes. Let's talk about really the impacts that you have seen in your own life of living a life that did not honor the Lord with sexual purity. LaShonda, you want to share?
So I would say for me, it impacted the way I saw myself. Yeah. Because that made me think, am I doing enough? Yeah. Do I need to do more? Am I missing something? Is something wrong with me? And so it doesn't just stay in that area of sex. Yeah. It triggers other areas of your life to where you feel like you have to perform and show up for the world. Yeah. And so that's how it has affected me in the past. It just didn't stay there with that person. It showed up on my job. It showed up in my relationships. Am I doing enough? Am I enough?
Yeah. I think that's a really good point, because it's not, I think we tend to compartmentalize, and it's like, oh, well, that's just this thing. Right. But it's like, when you talk about it permeating into your job and your parenting and your family life and all of these things, we see the residual impact. Absolutely. It doesn't mean we don't continue to rationalize it, though. Right. A season, that's for sure. Yeah. But thoughts on that, Alicia?
Yeah, I think I've definitely been a partaker in the friends with benefits culture, and for sure, it didn't mean I wasn't just as empty after as it was, before I made the phone call or sent the text message or did the whatever. And I think that's what people don't see, and so they just, continue to slip into something and then realize that, as they're doing that, they just go deeper and deeper into this hole, and this, this darkness begins to consume who you are. It takes away from what the Lord's purpose is for you, and you begin to just feel hopeless.
Yeah. Well, I think that this is really important, this conversation that, the world is the friends with benefits. Like, I can't even fathom that I would be in, middle school or high school and that even be a thing. I mean, at least then people were still pretending to be in a relationship, but it's so, that's the discussion about this pendulum swinging so far. And yet what often women will say is, oh, it's no big deal. That's, that doesn't bother me at all, whatever. And the truth of the matter is,
it absolutely
what
does.
You just said is it. Absolutely. It is the emptiness of living a life that does not honor the Lord. There's no fulfilling there. Yeah. You can chase the gratification over and over, and we could talk about sex, we could talk about food, we could talk about overspending. You can talk about, a number of things where you're filling the flesh and still feeling just as empty. Right. But the world will just keep telling you to, spend the money and do the thing and have more relationships. But go ahead.
And that in order to be fulfilled, that's the thing that you should be doing, So, I mean, you're getting hit from all angles, with all this messaging, and you just buy into it, and then it's as if you feel like you're on an island by yourself, and you're like, am I the only one that this is affecting this way? Maybe I'm, let me try it again, and see if I can get a different result this time, you know what I mean? And unfortunately, that's how you get caught in the loop, in my opinion,
I think so. I think it births pain, it births rejection, it births abandonment, disappointment, shame, guilt. You just go into all of the things that the Lord never created you to walk in. That's right. And, we were talking before about how you the Lord, people's perception, the world's perception of the word and the Lord's instructions are all about restriction. And yet we know, kind of being on the other side of it now, that it's all about the abundant life. That really, it's all about protection. It's all about Him knowing what is best. And when we get into alignment and obedience with that, there's just more and more and more overflow of blessing. But you can't see it when you're in it.
No,
you cannot see it. I was talking about this memory that I had about, I was watching probably 10 years ago. I was an adult. I mean, this was, not that long ago, but about 10 years, where I had this awareness about everything was sexy. I was watching a television program that was a cooking show, and the cook was talking about how sexy the food was. And then a commercial came on, and the commercial was about a furniture company and how sexy the couch was. And I just had this epiphany of how everything culturally has been pushed to sex. Like everything has to be sexy. And yet we know that there's no fulfillment in any of it. There's no fulfillment in stepping outside of what God's plan for the family and for sex was. The word says that there is, run from sexual sin. There's no other that so clearly affects the body. And so we know that. And we see the effects, and yet we see an entire culture that's immersed in it. And may I just say, a culture that's rooted in the church too. So this is not exclusive to non-believers. We're seeing the norm in the church is in singles ministries and single moms, and it's just everything is the convo about sexual impurity. It is, so normally accepted. And so have you seen that, LaShonda, in your social circles and that type of thing?
I definitely have seen it. Not necessarily not limited to my social circles, but in the church and the body in general, that we don't talk about it enough. I don't want to limit it to sex, right? But we don't talk about how the things, the bondage, the baggage that comes with it. The world flaunts sex out here, but a lot of women and men, I don't want to leave the men out, a lot of women and men are walking around wounded because they stepped outside of what God has for us. I know in particular for myself, I have always longed to be in relationship with a mate. And anytime I have been with someone, that was the ultimate desire, to be with that person. And when it was unfulfilled, that was resentment and bitterness and hurt and wounds. And so, of course, I can't speak for the whole world, but I know that God has called us to be in union. And not to step outside of that. And when we do step outside of that, we do experience those heart wounds.
Well, it's covenant. I mean, the covenant, when you enter into covenant, which the word says the marriage represents how Christ loves the church. And so there's, the bride and the bridegroom. Of course, Satan would attack the marriage because that really is representative of what the Lord has done on the earth. And so you see the why, but when you enter into covenant, you're entering into covenant with the Lord. And it's this really deep, intimate thing that's happening. The two become one. And this is, when it's all done according to the order, it is beautiful. But when it's out of order, so is the rest of your life. It's just complete chaos, and you get on a hamster wheel of running to try to, to catch up.
Not just your life. Anybody that, is attached to you, it rolls off. I think it's sad to watch, to step out of, like if I could step out and look at myself, from out here and zoom in and see, and it's so sad, the mess that I made, for my child, for my family, even the people that I called friends at the time. It's just chaos, which is nothing but Satan, because he is chaos, and we serve a God of order, and so it's amazing how different the two worlds are. When you decide to make a change, and really have a relationship with the Lord, I think,
It made me think about how sin affects the generations after us, right? And so how, and how when we decide to make a decision, now I'm not saying like, hey, you're married, things are going to be perfect. No, I'm not saying that. However, there is order. God is a God of order, right? And so when we step out, I can see today how me stepping out has affected my children.
Me too.
And that definitely breaks my heart.
Me too. Yeah, because that wasn't our intention.
It was not our intention.
No, not at all. But I mean, we were also listening to a world that was saying, it's okay to be a single mom. It's okay. Women can do this. You can do this. It's perfect. Well, sure you can. You can do it, but that's not the way that the Lord intended for it to be. Yeah. And you learn that real quick.
Well, and I think that what you're touching on is very important, because one of the things as a ministry that we have wanted to do is be a conduit of hope, and that women would know their identity in Christ, that women would know that there are others that love them, that see them, etc. But that we would never be in ministry that would be perceived as enabling the lifestyle. Oh, yeah. We're not enabling moms to become single moms. No. We're simply saying we're going to meet the need. Yeah. And I think that's really important, because I think that's indicative of what happened with the sex culture, is that same thing of just enabling what has happened. Yeah. We see that deterioration. Yeah. I want to transition the conversation for just a moment, though, and I want to talk about, especially, and Alicia, you alluded to this, that as you walk into intimacy with the Lord and you just become more and more serious about holiness and getting rid of anything in your life that does not serve the Lord, then how does that look, the before and after? Like the life that's surrendered to Christ in all areas, how have you seen the benefits of that versus living in the bondage of constantly one other broken heart, one other failed dream, I
think that, first, it was getting into the Word and just beginning to let that sort of saturate and sit in my heart. And as that happens, the walls begin to start to, kind of break down, and I begin to just let the Lord kind of love on me a little bit, I guess, and remind me of, I am worthy, of being loved, of not having this life. This, you begin to, or for me, I began to think, well, this is what I deserved. You made these choices, and so this is it. This is all there is, and I mean, I had people speak that over me, and so I think that was, just years of sitting with that going, oh my God, this is all there is. Yeah. There's nothing more, God, he's forgotten me.
Yeah. And so, then sitting with him and how he's ministered.
Right. And just slowly, ministered. And then, there are times in the beginning of that, I can remember sitting and saying, I know who I am. Yes. I know who I am. Like, I just had to keep repeating that. When you begin to start to have to fight with the spiritual warfare, for me, it was just reminding myself, you know who you are. Yes. Don't listen to these things. This is what the Word says. God says that you are worthy, that you are precious to Him, that He does bottle every tear that you cry. You are never alone. Yeah. And He's just been waiting on me. Yeah. He was waiting for me. Yeah. And as I begin to just sit in that and let that resonate in my mind, and then the walls begin to fall, and then I could begin to start to heal. Yeah. And wow, how powerful of a thing, It's amazing. It is. It's overwhelming and exciting. Mm-hmm. And then after that, like you said, it's not like you're not tempted. I think you'll always be tempted. But for me, it was like, now when if anything like that pops into my mind, it's like, you know what, I'm waiting to see what God has for me, because I've driven this bus and I drive it right off a cliff every time. So I'm just going to sit back, remember who I am, and take my hands off the wheel, Yeah. I can't afford a Tesla, but I can let God drive my car, you know what I mean? And so that's true. Just kind of, that's just what's working for me right now.
It's shutting down the DMs. Right, it's shutting down the access.
That's right. Absolutely.
It's shutting down the videos and the music. It's shutting down any access point where the enemy is going to take you on the trip.
Right.
Absolutely. It's being intentional and saying exactly what you just had revelation of, which is, I've driven myself into a place that does not end well. But the goodness of God, I can speak of His restoration and wholeness and healing. So praise God for that. Well, girls, thank you so much for joining us on a very important topic. We are so grateful. And thank you for joining us today. This has been Jennifer Maggio with The Life of a Single Mom, talking sex and dating.